Conviction is brought to you by Three Rings Circus Productions. For links to our valued sponsors and all the show notes from this podcast, please visit our website threeringscircus.com.au. At the end of episode 2, Craig and his wife Lisa had discovered a strange lump on the inside of their eldest daughter's elbow. Jessica was only 7 at the time, and at first it raised few concerns. This casual discovery and a new job opportunity would both shape and shatter Craig's entire life. We begin this episode with Craig explaining his mysterious new job offer.
I had a phone call actually from the Assistant Commissioner, and he said, "Can you come into my office?" And he said, "We've been noting what you've been doing, and you've come under notice by one of the bosses here. We're formulating a new squad. Would you be interested?" I said, "Oh, well, what is it?" He said, "Well, we can't really tell you." He said, "It's quite secretive, and we know that you've worked on a previous job where there's been corruption and secrets, and you worked at the State Major Incident Group, etc. We can't really tell you what the job's about until you actually sign up." And I said, "Well, I have been at the Special Ops for some time now. A change would be good." And he said, "Well, as an incentive, we are going to give you rapid promotion. It's only going to be a 3-year tenure because of the stress level. So after 3 years, you will be taken out, and then you'll be moved to a place where you'll be promoted. And you'll be also paid at a ranking officer during the time that you're here." He says, "You've got to understand, though, that you're going to disappear from the service. You're not going to be able to associate with police. You're not going to be able to see your old associates. If anyone rings you up, you're not going to be able to really talk to them unless they're really, really close friend and you trust them, but you can't tell them anything about what you're doing. You're virtually not going to be with the police for 3 years." I went, "Okay, well, that sounds interesting. Let me have a think about it." I thought it would be a good change. Change is always as good as a holiday, as they say, and I decided to take them up. I went back in and saw the Assistant Commissioner and agreed to it and signed up a secrecy agreement.
Craig signed on for this exciting new job without having any idea what it actually entailed. This was the first of many leaps into the unknown that will soon become a constant character trait, as we will reveal in following episodes.
I soon got a phone call. Up to this date, I still didn't know where I was going or what I was doing. I was told at 8 o'clock on a certain day to start over at the Crimes Commission, and this is the first day of my new job, this 3-year tenure that I'd signed up for.
The New South Wales Crime Commission is a statutory corporation of the Government of New South Wales. It is constituted by the Crime Commission Act 2012, the object of which is to reduce the incidence of organised crime and the other serious crime in the state of New South Wales, Australia.
It's run purely off the assets that are seized from crime. It's got a commissioner, it's got solicitors, and it uses or secons investigators from different areas. They work on the balance of probability, not like the New South Wales Police. So the balance of probability, if they suspect that someone's dealing drugs and the person can't prove where they got money or goods from, then it can be seized. In the New South Wales justice system, we have to prove beyond reasonable doubt. So it has a number of different legislations that can be used. It has its own hearing room where you can drag someone in, and if you put them into a hearing and find out that they're lying, or if they don't want to talk, you can just send them straight out to jail until they're willing to come through and tell the truth. It's a great intelligence tool. You cannot actually, during those hearings, sentence them or use that in a criminal matter. You're just using it as an intelligence base and gathering information on, and it's a great way of getting informants. Informants, for people who don't know, can be a non-criminal based person who knows someone who's committing an offence and wants to give them up. They can become an informant. Or we can have people who have been arrested, especially in the drug world, and don't want a heavy sentencing, and they'll say, "Look, if I give you information about X, Y and Z, would my sentence be reduced?" Which in general cases it is, and then the letter gets handed up to the magistrate or judge during sentencing, and they do get a lesser sentence.
This was an exciting and fresh opportunity. However, the excitement was dampened by developments at home. Their daughter Jessica's seemingly harmless lump.
We'd sort of forgotten about this little lump. It wasn't until I think Kylie had got an ear infection from being away in the pool probably. And we took her down to the doctors, or Lisa did, and Lisa said to our doctor, Richard Boyle, "Oh, well, here, can you have a look at this?" And showed the lump. And Richard said, "Okay, I don't like the look of that. I'm going to send you through to a specialist in DY." So we went through and he looked at it. He said, this is the next day. He said to Lisa, "I want you to go straight over to the Sydney Children's Hospital and get it checked out." So she headed straight over. And lo and behold, they said, "We want you back in tomorrow." We said, "What for?" We said, "Oh, I want to do a biopsy on the lump." And okay, it's getting a bit more serious than what we originally thought. So Lisa told me, and she said, "Oh, I don't think it's anything to worry about." And we're both sort of, think it's just going to be a little ulcer or some sort of cyst on the inside. Sure enough, we had the biopsy, and I think Lisa thought at first it was going to be all right, but Jessica thought it was going to be all right. Lisa came home that afternoon and said it was worse than she thought, as in trying to put a little 7-year-old in to get a biopsy done with a general, and they said they'd get back to us in about 3 days with the result. And it was a long process, and it was a long 3 days.
Craig was used to waiting. This is what he did. Watching, waiting, observing his targets for hours, days on end. But this was different. Every second a torment, every day a torture.
The 3 days with Jessica just took so long, but eventually it came back, and it came back with a bad result. We were called in, both of us were called in to the hospital with Jessica, and she was diagnosed with having a form of cancer, and it was a really rare form of cancer that only happened with kids the age of 3 to 15. It was a bone cancer called Ewing Sarcoma, and it's where a tumour develops in the long limbs of the body. I think it was about a 35% success rate of recovering. Thinking, okay, we're going to get over this. We'll have to do what we've got to do, and we'll get on with it. Dr. Richard Conn was our specialist. He had just come out to Australia from South Africa, a lovely, lovely man, and he called a spade and club a club. There was no mucking around. He spoke in English, didn't speak in doctor's terminology. I love the bloke. He became a very good friend, and he told us exactly what was going on. She virtually had to go in and start chemotherapy and radiation from that day. He said, "This is the only way that we can try and challenge this cancer. It's a very aggressive cancer. It'll eventually, if it goes through, she'll get it in her lungs, and that's where it goes to. But we're hoping that we can beat it. It's in the right arm. It's only in its initial stage." So we started treatment. From then on, bang, life changes so quick. Lisa, she had a job. She was working with a family business. She worked in the office. She did a couple of days a week. I was still a policeman. We still had 2 other kids to look after. We still had a mortgage. Nothing changes in your normal life. And it's hard adjusting and even thinking about adjusting, but you do. And that's what we had to do. We both agreed that we had to try and keep Jessica as normal as possible. Schooling was to be normal outside of hospital life. Nothing was going to change, and we tried to treat her that way.
Now, facing the diagnosis, Craig and Lisa did whatever had to be done. It wasn't easy. It never is.
She had to have radiation for about a 6-week period on her right elbow, which is like a pinpoint. Everyone knows what radiation is. Pinpoint radiation there onto the tumour to try and disperse the tumour and to kill it. And then the chemotherapy, the easiest way to describe that's just a toxic poison. It's like taking 3 steps backwards and then 1 step forward, and you keep trying to get further forward than backwards. It has a undesirable effect on the body. They lose their hair, become nauseous, lose weight, very sick. And obviously being a child, as a parent, you've got to live in the hospital as well. And that's what we did. We started living in the hospital. The pattern was she'd sometimes do maybe 5-6 days straight have a few off, then go back in for a small dose of 3 days, have another couple of days off, then go back in for another long 5 or 6 days. And that was pretty much a 12-month stint of how they'd planned it. Jessica was a trooper. She was 7 at the time. Didn't ask too much. She seemed to take it all in. She understood that she had an illness and that it had to be treated. And I must admit I learned a lot from not only my child but some of the other kids that were in there at the time. You basically shared a room with 4 others, all different types of cancer. There weren't many with Ewing Sarcoma. From memory, over the 12 months there was only 1.
Ewing sarcoma typically occurs in children and young adults. It often begins in the legs, bones of the pelvis and arms. The overall 5-year survival rate for localised Ewing sarcoma is 70%. Patients with metastatic disease have a 5-year survival rate of 15% to 30%. Ewing sarcoma. What strange words these were to the Guzet family. But unfortunately they became all too familiar, as were the consequences of its presence in their life. During all of this, Craig was trying to focus on his new deployment. This was the beginning of Project Gaimea, a task force so secret that a Google search 25 years later still won't turn up any results.
So I finished off in the special ops and started my new job. It consisted of 9 staff. That's all there were. 9 staff that had been handpicked out of 14,000 people. I think the reason was that we had just undergone the Woods Royal Commission, which was into corruption in the police, and it was a large amount of corruption that had been unearthed.
The Wood Royal Commission into the New South Wales Police Service was established to investigate the existence and extent of police corruption in the state. In December 1994, the inquiry was expanded to include investigation into the protection of pedophiles by New South Wales Police. The Commission held public and private hearings, interviews with victims and offenders, and informal and formal discussions with experts, police, and other authorities. Research, surveillance, and undercover operations were also undertaken, and public submissions were received.
They'd actually got a new commissioner in from overseas, first time ever, I believe, and it was Peter Ryan from England. Peter Ryan knew no one. He had a vast experience and knowledge, and he had set this team up. It was his idea, as far as I know, that he wanted to set up a unit called the Special Crime Unit, and it was going to investigate organised crime syndicates that were suspected of being linked to corrupt police. We were going to be removed from everything. Computer systems, given different names, everything else, and we'd be investigating organised crime without anyone knowing. We were put into their room on one of the levels where it was like a meeting room, and briefed by the Commissioner, Peter Ryan. He'd pulled us all in and we'd met each other and introduced ourselves and went round the table, gave a bit of a background on what we did, and then Peter Ryan spoke. He told us that we were going to be engaging in some high-level organised crime syndicates, that we would be put under pressure, that there could be an element of corruption, police corruption that came into the jobs, and to expect that. He gave us the same spiel that we had to be hidden away from everyone else that we'd previously worked with. We couldn't tell anyone what we're doing. It was extremely secretive. It was given the code name of Gaimea. That was its reference name with the Commission, Gaimea. We were soon to find out that our first target was a King's Cross identity. He had escaped all the Woods Royal Commission inquiry. As a result of the Woods Royal Commission, the police had also put a task force BACS in place to investigate odd ends of crooks and suspect corrupt police. We were hidden away from that. They didn't know we existed. We were doing similar, but we were doing it in a different way. Our first target was a bloke by the name of Les Kalachi.
Next time on Conviction, Craig gets to know Project Gaimea's first target, Les Kalachi, and Jessica's battle with cancer inspires a surprise and arduous adventure.